Hey guys, welcome to my round 24 recap of the NRL. Stick around as we get back to round 24's games. Now, the first game of the round was actually, for me, one of the most boring. Now, the Tigers taking on the Sea Eagles. This was a must-win for the Tigers to make the top 8. It's not going to happen. So, if you're a Tigers fan, I'm very sorry about that. It's not going to happen. I did have some hope for them. This game was a game that I turned off and I watched maybe the last 10 minutes and the first 10 minutes. I just didn't enjoy it, didn't get into it. It was a 22-20 win for the Tigers. Now, the Tigers didn't do much in the first half, but in the second half, from what I saw in the highlights, they built the momentum, but they did give away that penalty from 50 metres out in which Cherry Evans tried to kick a penalty goal, missing it by centimetres, maybe even a metre, but nothing less than that. But overall, this wasn't a game for me that I really enjoyed watching, but it was a good win for the Tigers side, being outside the 8, getting the 2 points. Now, the second game of the round, the New Zealand Warriors taking on the Penrith Panthers. So, I thought that the Panthers would win this game because the Warriors haven't been great at home, the Panthers haven't been great lately, so I thought it was time for them to strike back. No, they lost 32-16. The momentum built from this Warriors side lately has been great. They shouldn't have lost to the Bulldogs, but that was a one error. But this game, they showed they were back. Sean Johnson had a great game, and David Fusatua, I'm not sure if he got man of the match, but he definitely deserved it, getting a double try, playing really well, defending really well. But a 36-16 win over Penrith at home as well. The third game of the round was the North Queensland Cowboys taking on the Parramatta Eel. Now, as an Eels fan, I'm quite disappointed in this game. This was a game I knew that the refs would not let us win, but it just was not fair. There were so many wrong calls against us, so many tries scored by us denied, and it should have been a closer margin. If I'm being honest, I think it could have been maybe 18-30, a win by 12 points for the Cowboys, but I am very salty on how we were treated throughout this game. A lot of wrong calls, a sin binning, things like that. It was a 44-6 victory for the Cowboys at Spoon Bowl. Jonathan Thurston didn't get a try. That was one thing that disappointed me, and I really didn't enjoy watching this game because there were so many wrong calls against Parramatta, even though they didn't put in their best. Even though they scored 6 points, I thought they played better in the Melbourne game. The next game was the Rabbitohs and the Raiders. Now, the Rabbits had lost 2, so this needed to be their win, but the Raiders had a lot of confidence coming from last week's win over Sydney Roosters. Now, the Raiders won this game 24-12, and the Raiders side was really good, really dominative of the South Sydney side after having a 10-0 lead, which is disappointing for players like Greg Inglis and things to return from injury, but I think the Rabbitohs are due to strike back sometime soon. Next up, we had the Gold Coast Titans take on Melbourne Storm. Now, the final score was Melbourne 10-8, but I think the Gold Coast Titans were the better side in this game. I personally think the Storm were piggybacked a lot into this game, and the Titans in the first half were very dominative, leaving the Melbourne Storm scoreless until the second half. I quite enjoyed this game. It was close to being my game of the week. The defence from the Titans was really good, but it just wasn't enough to stop the Storm from getting in there with some late tries and a 10-8 win over the Gold Coast Titans. The next game was a shocker for me. I honestly thought the Roosters were going to win this game, strike back big here by about 16. Now, they lost by 14 to the Brisbane Broncos. Now, I'm not saying the referees were involved in this game much, but I think there are a few wrong calls here. But Dylan Napa, that tackle on McCulloch was just wrong. Disgusting. I think it's the second or third tackle or head clap I've seen from him this year, and I haven't been happy with his behaviour throughout this game. Blake Ferguson had a really good game, and James Tedesco, I think, had a cracker of a match on the weekend. So it was a 22-8 win. Jermaine Asako really stepping up here against Latrell Mitchell in this game, and a big win for the Broncos, putting them, I think, into 6th position. The next game was the Cronulla Sharks taking on the Newcastle Knights. Now, from the records, this was always going to be a big game from Cronulla, but I wasn't too sure because the Knights really got into this game at the start, and By half time, it was only 14 points to 6. It wasn't quite a big lead. Normally, it's like 60 or 40 scored by the Cronulla Sharks, but it was only 38 to 12, which I think is a better improvement. It's still not good for the Knights side. Nick Meaney had a really good game, I thought. Had a really great game for Newcastle Knights. I think it was his 4th game playing for the side. And Valentine Holmes has always stood out with Sasai Feki and Edric Lee also stepping up to a great win for Cronulla, putting them in the top 4. And last but not least, guys, my game of the round. I called this one a while back and I won some money from it. The Dragons taking on the Bulldogs at home. The Dragons, 0. The Bulldogs, 38. Now, I expected the Bulldogs to win by 10 to 12 points. I did not expect this scoreline. Ben Hunt played atrocious. I was very disgusted in his kicking game and just the way he played. Putting Nightingale to fullback and experimenting that side very much backfired on Paul McGregor. I thought that the Dragons started to build up a little bit of momentum, but every time that they did this, there was knock-ons, errors, forward passes, or they were running on their 5th tackle, which isn't a good play. You have to kick, guys. And I know you miss Widdop, but you need to build this momentum coming into final. Now, Ben Hunt, I'm not even going to go there. Now, Kieran Holland, goal kicking, brilliant. Really good goal kicker. Not as good as Reece Martin, but good that he stepped in for Reece Martin and did really well for the Bulldogs, getting them some big points for their for and against on the ladder. And Will Hopewade at fullback. I thought Will Hopewade had a really good game. The Morris brothers, but the standout player for me was Remus Smith. Put some money on him to score. He ended up getting, was it a hat-trick or 2? I think it was 2, but it may have been a hat-trick. Remus Smith is definitely going to be a great player for the Bulldogs coming into next year. And I think Nick Meaney, who I spoke about in the last round video, is actually coming to the Bulldogs next year, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, guys, this was my game of the round. I really enjoyed it. It was a good round. Not a good round for my Eel, but I think it was a good round of football, and there were some upsets that people weren't expecting, which is it's always good to see. So I'll give you my tips for next week. Alright, so in front of me are my written down picks for round 25 of the NRL, the last standard round. Alright, the Rabbitohs taking on the Tigers. I'm going to go the Rabbitohs by 8. The Warriors taking on the Raiders. The Raiders have been really good lately, but I'm going to say the Warriors are going to strike back here and beat the Raiders by 12 points. I think the Storm at home against Penrith are going to be very vulnerable. The Penrith Panthers are going to be very vulnerable, and I think the Storm are going to put 14 on them. I think the Knights at home against the Dragons. I think the Dragons need to win this, and they're going to win it by 4 points. I think that the Cowboys are going to get their last win for Jonathan Thurston against the Gold Coast Titans up at Seabus Stadium by 12 points. I'm going for an upset here. I'm going to say that at home, confidently, that the Parramatta Eels are going to get their last win of the season in their last game over the Sydney Roosters by 2. Eels by 2. I'm going to go the Sharks to beat the Bulldogs by 12. I've got 3-12 margins this week, and I'm going to go for an upset on Sunday afternoon. I'm going to say at home at Suncorp that Manly are going to defeat Brisbane Broncos by 6 points. So that's my picks for the week, and that's my recap. I'll see you guys next week. I hope you enjoyed this video.